Good morning, everyone. Excellent. So again, I'm Ebony Bridwell-Mitchell. I hate this podium, so I'm going to be in lots of different places. So what I want to do first is let you know that I'm a professor here at HGSE and I study schools as organizations. You may have been wondering what that song was. Well, that song is in fact one of the most popular songs was when I was teaching this group of 6th grade students in East New York, Brooklyn. I will not say exactly how long ago that was, but if you know the song, you can do your own math. I'll leave it to you. But the song and these kids are, for me, a constant touchstone about why I do the work that I do. Now, the song is a touchstone because it represents, if you listen to the lyrics about having just one shot, that song represents what public schooling is for most of the kids that I taught, and quite frankly, for me, when I was a kid, when I went to school right down the street at Cambridge Latin, when most of the houses there were still tracked by race and gender and social background. And the reason I do the work I do is to make sure kids just like mine, just like me, just like the ones you will serve, have the chance to realize their one shot, their full potential in public schools. Now, when I tell people that the reason I study organizations is to help kids recognize their full potential, sometimes people say, well, what does studying organizations have to do with helping kids realize their potential? Well, what I want to let you know is that when you're thinking about realized potential, it actually is a combination of two factors. Realized potential is really a function of two things, both choice and constraint. Now, when I say choice, I mean individual decisions and actions of families, of kids that enable agency. But when I say constraint, I mean the available opportunities and how those are structured amongst different groups and how that inhibits agency. Organizational researchers like me understand that one of the biggest constraints facing kids in schools is something I talk about as institutions. Now, I want to use that term very carefully because oftentimes people use it in a lot of different ways. An institution is a patterned set of beliefs, practices, and structures which are long held, they've been around forever, they're deeply ingrained, they're value laden, we hold on to them, and we widely accept them as being appropriate even when they no longer accomplish what we want in terms of desired outcomes or stated functions. Now, like all good teachers, I want to give you a minute for wait time. How does that definition match with the way I think of institutions? That's what you should be asking yourself. And as you do, you may say to yourself, well, it's not that strange to think about institutions as constraining, but I've found people often talk about institutions as if they're out there somewhere. Institutions are not out there somewhere. They are instantiated in organizations and enacted by people inside organizations. And that's why it's so important to study organizations, something I'm hoping you all will open yourselves up to, the idea of studying organizations while you're here at HGSE. So what I want to do in the little time we have left together is talk to you about some of the ways institutions are instantiated in and enacted in organizations. A well-known sociologist named Dick Scott talks about the 3 ways that institutions are instantiated in organizations. One is regulative forces, or the kinds of sanctions that exist for certain behaviors. One is normative forces, or the kinds of social groups that influence how we behave. And the other is cognitive forces, meaning our own mental schema about how the world works. My entire program of research is designed to try and understand how these forces are instantiated in organizations. I want to talk to you briefly about 3 studies that I have been working on that talks about and looks at how these forces are instantiated in organizations. The first study is a study of regulative forces, or the kinds of rules and regulations and resource allocations that make it risky or unrewarding or even infeasible to do anything outside of the status quo. This study is actually a study of school partnerships that looks at how schools' access to the resources partners have is actually constrained by the pattern of relationships in the overall school partner network. So for example, schools way out over there on the edge where you see the circles, those schools have a much harder time. They're on the periphery, a harder time getting access to partners, and then therefore resources. And schools that have to compete for partners have a much harder time getting access to those resources. The second study is a study about normative forces, meaning the way our interactions and our identification with social groups rewards us socially for conforming to what our peers think is the right thing. This is actually a study of teachers in schools and how their beliefs about reform, their practices related to reform, are actually shaped by the communities that they interact in. Meaning teachers in some communities are more likely to think that reform is about professional bureaucracy. And teachers in other communities are more likely to think that reform is about market accountability or communal sentiment. Finally, the very last study, one that I'm working on right now, so it's the one I'm most excited by, is about cognitive forces. And by that I mean the taken for granted understandings that we have about how our work and our world works. This is actually a study about state-led school turnaround, and what I'm starting to discover as I analyze my data is that leaders, both at the district and school level, have what Berger and Luckman called ready-made accounts, or stories they tell themselves about why it is their students and schools are not doing well. Stories like the one in that first quote where Jaheim is being talked about and why he can't go to class and can't do well because of his background or because of his home life. But I'm also discovering in my data analysis that staff who work at the state and provide technical assistance to schools have the opportunity to challenge those ready-made accounts. And doing so in something that I'm talking about is moments of institutional interstitiality, where they juxtapose the accepted reality against possible alternatives, where staff can ask themselves questions about what they take for granted as their work and what their role in student performance might actually be. That was exactly 8 minutes. Thank you very much.